The next tool we'll look at is the Generative Fill. Now, few features in Photoshop have generated as much controversy as Generative Fill. You can go on YouTube and find a dearth of self-appointed Photoshop gurus, several of which might actually know what they're doing, touting this tool as the answer to the meaning of life. And indeed, after spending a bit of time with it, Generative Fill is actually quite amazing. But it's not the push-button awesomeness most would have you believe. And yes, it can give you a great starting point to add a touch of creativity not otherwise doable, or actually worth the time to create manually. It is really startling in some cases what you can do, but you gotta be careful to do it right, just with all things in Photoshop. Just remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Now we're going to work on some landscape images for this lesson, given that's my photographic specialty, and I'll show you what to look for in using this tool, magical though it is. All right, I'm going to show you exactly how Generative Fill works, but the first thing I need to kind of impart to you is that this thing is really persnickety. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. When it works fabulously. I mean, you just absolutely can't believe the results that you've gotten. But there are many, many times when you attempt to do something and it just doesn't seem to want to cogitate. And you'll see how that works on this image, taken in Yosemite National Park across Cook's Meadow after a storm has been moving out. Let's go ahead and go to Command 1 and go to 100% magnification on this image. And then I'll navigate over to this area right here. And what I want to do is put in just a small deer kind of grazing in the meadow out here, just to give it a little bit of a little more drama. So the first thing we do is come up and grab the lasso tool, and I cannot emphasize to you enough, don't expect miracles every single time. It just really depends on a number of variables that people just don't understand yet. This thing is so new. All right, so we make a little circle right there, and it might have been just a bit big, but let's go ahead forward, see what we get. Hit Generative Fill, and then what you do is you just type in what you want to see, deer. Okay, let's start with something simple. Go Generate. This does take a minute, and what it's doing is that it's looking at Adobe stock to see if it can find an image that will match. And we'll go over that particular issue later because it's something you're going to want to know. All right, now, two things to observe right here. Number one, the tone is unbelievable. I mean, these quote-unquote deer match the tone of the image unbelievably. And if you go to a full view on the image, it's just a magnificent result creatively. So let's go back to full view on this image, and we'll once again navigate to this area. And I want to direct your attention over to the right-hand side of the workspace where we have three variations right here. So it gives you three possibilities that you might want to use. Now this one is as close as we're going to get to being useful, and I'll explain to you why. Okay, these are elk. These are not deer. There are no elk in Yosemite. So if you want to be really accurate with your representation, then you really should see deer and not elk. Now, there was a time when elk were plentiful in Yosemite when it was first discovered in 1851, and they were pretty much hunted to extinction in the Yosemite area. But if you wanted to say, title this image Yosemite in the Past, you might be able to pull that off, just as long as you're admitting that this is a composite. People will know instantly that there's no elk in Yosemite, so just to put them out there without some sort of comment would not serve you well. So let's go ahead and try again and see if we can get the result we're looking for. Let's go with the term deer and antlers. See if that doesn't narrow things down just a bit. But again, you come over to the right-hand side of the workspace and you simply alter your search term, hit Generate, and it will give you three more choices. So you can refine this as much as you want to. You can vary it. You can enter the exact same term over and over, and believe it or not, you will get different results. So it is definitely trial and error. Another elk, and another elk, and another elk. And so I mean, there's the fallacy of it. Now again, to repeat, Aesthetically, it's unbelievable. I think you'd agree. Even to the point of hiding the hooves in a depressed area of the meadow. I mean, just the intricacy of how this comes together is just unbelievable. But there you see what generative fill does and what it doesn't do. Again, to repeat, it takes practice. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't work, it doesn't work. When it does, my goodness, the results are unbelievable. Let's look at another image and see where it does work and really does serve the image. All right, let's take a look at this sunset shot in Central Texas, and we're going to dress this image up. And we're going to go down to the lower left-hand corner. We're going to take our lasso tool as we did before, and we're going to try to put an old Texas windmill in here, and let's see what kind of result we get. So we start and we draw an area where we really want it to be, and we're going to drop down below the horizon into the foreground. Complete the circle, and of course it doesn't have to be perfect. We hit generative fill, and how about just Texas windmill? And see what we get. I practiced this lesson and it worked wonderfully, which is why I'm doing it, but you can never tell what generative fill is going to give you as a result, so we just cross our fingers every time. See there? That's not an old Texas windmill. That was not what it gave me initially. Now that's more like it, and that is more like it. I'm going to run it again because before it did not give me that wind generator, so let's try it again. We'll just run the same one again. And we really could have done it over here on the right, but I just did it on the floating panel just to do it that way. You can do it either way when you're updating your term. Okay, much better. Now I want to point something out to you on this particular result. Let's navigate down, and look what it did was it added something to the background. It also added some foliage over here, none of which was a bad thing. It's just, but you can tell to what length it goes to match the area that it's being placed in, and I think that's going to do just perfect. But look at that result. I mean, that's just unbelievable. And let's do this. Let's just, for giggles, let's try an area right here. I'm going to just say old barn and just see what happens. I mean, this is an experiment. I haven't practiced this part, but I thought let's just see what happens. Old barn. I need to spell that correctly, obviously. We hit enter. There's one result, which ain't bad. There's another result, kind of plain, doesn't look much like an old barn, but that works. That's an old house, and that works. It's facing into the sunset. It's a silhouette. It certainly matches the windmill. So, I mean, we can put a flock of buzzards. Let's go over here. Flock of buzzards. Just see what happens. This is actually a lot of fun. Let's see. Okay, so flock of buzzards in Central Texas. I'm not holding my breath on this one, but we may get surprised. Well, first of all, those aren't buzzards. Let's see what happens here. That's getting better. And I think that's the best one. And I think the best thing we're going to be able to do is just simply to go into silhouette. I mean, none of these are really good. Some work better than others. All right, let's go ahead and get rid of that layer because that was just an experiment. But now you can see, I do believe, the good and the bad of generative fill in Photoshop Beta 24.7.